At a very young age, and I'm saying like 10, 11, 12, I'd always, when I'd play catch, like throw the ball as far as I could. It wasn't a particular like quote unquote routine that I was doing at that age. It was just like, okay, like I want to throw the ball far. You know how we are as kids. We want to like compete against other people and see if we're elite or whatnot. And you know, I always had good arm strength. Yeah, we can talk about like genetics and just athletic, you know, ability and whatnot, but it was me just being intentional about literally throwing the ball as far as I could. And once I got to a particular organization in professional baseball, they didn't necessarily believe in long toss. You know, they were kind of on the side of things, which a lot of people are, as in regards to the body, you know, moving in a way that it doesn't necessarily move like on the mound, therefore it's not replicating the mound throw, therefore you're creating bad habits and so on and so forth. Again, like I stated in the beginning of this blog, was that I'm going to speak from personal experience. And my personal experience was, as soon as I got to this particular organization that took my long toss away and I was capped at 120 feet, you know, my arm and my body didn't respond well. I got out of that natural freedom that I think the long toss allowed me to have, that competition as far as like the intentional throwing the ball far, intent behind like arm speed. And long story short, you know, fast forward a few years into that organization and I was throwing mid-80s. Now, I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and say, well, that's the sole reason why. Like, there's a lot of other factors, but, you know, we won't dive into those. But I think a big factor was that the long toss was taken away. I got released, and then it was kind of like, you know, back to the drawing board. What is a routine? What are things that I could do that are going to put me in the best possible situation to get another job? And that was, you know, establishing another long toss and just being intentional. And this is where my career really took off, was because I identified certain protocols that best equipped me and my arm and my body responded really well to, that I knew from when I was, you know, 15 years old that I responded well to that. And that's where it gets tricky, because I think we have like, you know, certain studies that come out saying that long toss is bad because of valgus stress, and it's bad because you're doing this and that. And it's like, I come from a space where it's like, yo, you got to identify, I talk about this all the time, I know I sound like a broken record, but you got to identify like protocols and routines that are going to best equip you to maximize like your potential. And long toss goes hand in hand with that for me. When you long toss, you tap into that power that you didn't know you had, because a lot of the disconnect with guys is that when they're throwing 60 feet in a game to a catcher or whatever, they have this subconscious, like, I need to throw it there thing, you know, and we all want to command the baseball, but they have that, I'm going to throw it there, I'm going to throw it there, I'm going to place it there. And what long toss does is it connects the brain and the body to the point where you see a target that you're trying to hit at a great distance, and your body connects with that and says, yo, I gotta do whatever it frickin' takes to get that ball there, which means I gotta be in super powerful, super efficient positions. I gotta produce as much force as I can into the ground, and I gotta transfer that as best I know how to get as much kinetic energy and much power out through the fingertips for that ball to go where I want it to go. Now, you know, we talk about why pull downs are good for that reason too. And we talk about how, you know, like I mentioned earlier, the disconnect from, you know, if you cap your throwing program at a certain distance and you're just throwing to your partner. Now, I've been on record to say that there's not one throwing program that's quote unquote good or bad. I've played with plenty of people throughout my career that throw 100 plus, but they only throw like 90 feet every day. So again, it goes back to the identification process. But throughout my time in that particular organization where my velocity just dropped drastically, I got away from that mentality of like, you know, the intent, throwing through guys, throwing it at max power output. And then with that, I just forgot how to do that. So then when we look at my long toss, you know, it forced me to tap into that power. It forced me to move in such a way that I was able to tap into that power. And then, you know, we talk about how do we translate that. I included the link to that particular subject that I touched on earlier, but in short, like, we translate it by hammering as much reps as we can in which we know that the body is synced up and freaking powerful, and then we just blend that to the mount. I just kind of continued that routine and took off, and then next thing I know, I was, you know, throwing the hardest that I've ever thrown in my career, upwards to 99 miles an hour. And it was just literally like developing these certain protocols that I needed to do per week. You know, however many long toss days that was, how many pull down days that was. And then, I mean, that's why I always stress about those protocols that you set in place for yourself, because that's where you see that personal growth. Well, we stop because, you know, the volume really increases. Say if you're in the bullpen, or if you're starting and it's getting into the second half, we think about like this brake pedal approach to our, you know, routines, because we got to save our bullets for the game. You know, it just wasn't for me. It didn't work, and that's what we touch on. I included the link to the Alan Jaeger podcast in this post, and I encourage you guys to take a listen on that, because it's like you flip the script on it, man. Like, your arm cannot grow unless you give it the stimulus to freaking grow. It's, you know, and what I mean by that is, like, if we're constantly being restricted within the way that we throw, then how do we expect to grow? You know what I mean? And it just makes sense to me. I'm telling you, there's such a disconnect when it comes to the brain and the body when guys are throwing to a target and it's close, you know. And you really force yourself to get into your most powerful positions when you're throwing to a target at a great distance. You start seeing that brain-body connection. I'll include a link to the segment I did on brain-body connection as well. Yeah, I'll be sure to include some videos of my long toss as well, and just trying to replicate that, you know, into the pull downs, into the flats, into the mounds. We're just trying to translate that all the way through. All right, guys, much love. And until next time, I'm out. See ya.